All right, well, hey guys, it's Tristan again, here for another episode of Chess Fridays. This one is going to be on an actual Friday. Today we're going to be going over a little bit of some chess traps, and these are pretty cool because basically just the idea behind them is they're variations on openings or just ways to capitalize on common moves and openings that you wouldn't normally think of, and that even grandmasters, even people who just anyone who's really not familiar with them, which can be at any level, can fall into, and they can really be devastating. So without further ado, we're going to get into the first one, which is called the legal trap. I don't know why. We haven't gone over the opening that it comes from, but I think if you look at it closely, it kind of the opening definitely espouses those opening principles. It's called the Italian game, and so it looks like this. E4, E5, of course. Very common chess opening, and also good for both people if they want to try and exploit these F7 and F2 squares that are weak. And then just kind of follows with a pretty normal progression of things. Knight, aggressing that pawn and then defending it. Just pretty normal stuff. And then again, the Italian game, that bishop goes to c4. And now you have some pressure because you're attacking that f7 square, and if you move this this knight to here and then to here, within two moves you got two people bearing down on that f7 square. But anyway, now for this trap to work, your opponent has to play a pretty passive defense of this strategy, which is just this, d6, and that's probably what's gonna end up, eliminating this from most of your games. I feel like most people aren't just gonna be that passive. But anyway, assuming that they go that way, your next step is developing that knight to c3, and it'll become pretty clear as to why that is important a little bit later. But safe to say, that definitely sets up this play in a way. And then another common move from black here is to aggress onto that knight and kind of pin it to that space, because you don't want to lose your queen early on. However, the trap is what most players don't see at this point, is because they're this is just another normal boring opening and they're not looking for it, is that at this point black is like 3 moves away from checkmate. And the way that you can guarantee that this occurs is actually moving h3, moving your pawn up 1 to threaten this bishop. And the best move for black to do actually is to take this knight right here and just kind of exchange it, because you're taking both knights. Well, all 4 knights on the board have equal value, right? But the bishops actually, because one's in a light square and one's in a dark square, are not equally valued. The dark square bishop for black and the light square bishop for white are actually more valuable than their counterparts, and so exchanging your light square bishop for a knight, especially in the very early game, it's at least an equal trade, but it might actually be a little bit better in favor of black. But anyway, the best move here would be to do that. But if they're falling into the trap, they're not making the best move. And so a lot of players, they want to keep the pressure up on the queen, and they don't want to just automatically, just move back this bishop, because you never want to make a move developing a piece and then move it straight back. And so they'll go like that, bishop to h5. They'll just back up a little bit, but not actually fully retract the attack. And now that the trap has been accepted or whatever, it's pretty much, it's not checkmate, but it's not great. And the move now is this, and yeah, this move is pretty. You'd think that it would be rather easy to defend against this, but actually this ends up being pretty bad for black in the long run, because this actually puts black pretty close to being checkmated, and it's just not easy to defend against this, because now, wow, sorry, but this move is particularly potent because even though there are two aggressors, they could easily just take this knight back. You don't want to do that because now you have this opportunity to take the queen. And this is what gets a lot of players to fall for the trap because, one, if they take this knight, definitely a better move. However, most people, you get the knight and then you lose your. If you take the knight, let's say you take the knight with the your knight, then you just lose this, and you're kind of even if you take this, then boom, check, and you're going to lose your knight anyway. So there's no real. It's definitely the better move in this situation because you don't get checkmated, but the alternative to taking the queen isn't very sexy either if you look at it. But a lot of players won't see the fact that literally you're about to get checkmated, and so they'll take the queen here. And then what you can do is go like this, and this puts black in check, and so black can't just take this because it's not a legal move anymore. So the only play, and black can't go here because it's being aggressed on by this knight, and so black's only move is to go forward one, and then this is why this knight development was important. Boom, checkmate. And so it's very quickly, you lost your queen, but you got checkmated in 8 moves. So definitely a pretty potent trap to fall into. And let's go back and look at this. What I was saying is even if you don't take the queen, even if you instead choose to do this, you still end up just trading via that sequence of moves. You still end up just trading material. Like there's no, even if you make the better move, which is probably the queen there, you still end up with each person having one bishop and one knight. And in this situation, white's pieces are a lot better developed, and white can immediately kingside castle and do a whole bunch of other stuff that is much better for white. Let's go back to this point. Now we'll look at now obviously the better move to make is to take this or move back or anything, but the reason that this move has to go through is the reason that you need this pawn to actually make this move. Like, because you could say, oh, why can't I just attack this immediately? Well, what happens is if you attack this, then it's pretty easy immediately for you end up giving up a knight for a pawn because the knight knight takes here, and then but there's nothing to stop in this case there's nothing to stop black from taking the knight here, because even if you take, like, you can't take the bishop because then the knight takes. So then you end up having to defend your queen by pushing this here, and you end up on the back foot if you don't move up forward, if you don't move to h3 first. But it is a very powerful move because if they make the wrong move, you end up in this situation, and that's checkmate right there. So there's a lot of potential with this, but if you don't make this crucial move right here, you end up definitely on the back foot. So now, so that was the Siberian Trap. Sorry, that was the legal trap. The next trap that we're going to go over is the Siberian Trap. And this starts with a pretty specific series of moves, which I'm going to rush through a little bit, but as like I always post a blog post on Learnivore about these, and it'll definitely be, the notation for it will definitely be in the blog post, as well as, you know, it's about to be right here on the side. So here's how that is going to work. It starts out with e4, you know, standard white opening move, and then the defense is going to be the Siberian defense, which is, I think it's why it's called the Siberian Trap. C5, kind of an odd one, but now the trap opens up with, oh, this is actually a trap that black plays on white and not the other way around, which also makes it pretty unique. Give both sides one trap. So now, you know, black's going to take for the opening, and then the gambit is offering up another pawn here, and so black's going to take that, and then he gets retaken, and this is supposed to, you know, open up all of this field position for white, whereas, you know, maybe you've lost, you're down one pawn as white now in this situation, but your opponent literally has moved to one pawn total the whole game, and you have one pawn up here unopposed in the center. You have this knight developed. You have a much easier path to development for, you have your bishop. You can develop both bishops. You can develop your queen. You're well on your way to castling. You know, you're 2 moves away from castling in either direction. So it's just like a pretty good space for white to be in. However, we'll see why if it continues as it has been continuing, not great. And then, you know, the move right here for black is just kind of mimic this knight development on the queen side. Pretty standard opening move, kind of follows like opening procedures, develop your pieces, want to get control of the center, prevent your opponent from doing so. Standard opening stuff. Then white is going to do another very standard opening move. Knight to f3, just developing his knights. And now now black is going to play this e6 pawn right here, not developing it all the way up, but going a little bit. And then, you know, this defends against the next move of white's, which is bishop to c4, kind of bearing down on that f7 square, but the e6 square kind of means you have like 2 things to go through to get to it. Definitely a good defensive move. And then, you know, but this still looks pretty good for white and pretty bad for black at this point, because white has a bunch of pieces developed. You know, the queen has a pretty much open file. So nothing can really move into, you know, this zone right here. Because of that queen, you know, the king is defended because there's nothing. This would be a little bit worse if black was as developed as white is at this point. Because, you know, there's a lot of open space you can get into attack this king with, but right now, nothing can really get into that space for black because it's being defended so well. Pretty much this space and this space, this space, this space, and this space. Every single space is being threatened by one of white's pieces at this point. And so it's a good, definitely well defended, even though it looks a little bit open, and well developed anyway. Black's next move is queen to c7, which actually ends up being a pretty big move later on down the line, but it can just be, that's definitely a move that if you are playing somebody for the first time, you're like, oh wow, like that's a bad move right there. Like this person doesn't know what they're doing, but it ends up being pretty important because the next move is a classic kingside castling. Why else would we move why else would we move the knight and the kingside knight and bishop out first if we weren't going to castle? Great field position. Now though, it kind of starts heating up a little bit. I mean, I guess not, but nf6, knight to f6 is the beginning of the end here, because now you probably still think, you know, this is literally just, this is starting to become almost the same board for white and black, but white just has a small advantage, and you know, if they're able to capitalize on it, they should crush. Black has definitely made some good moves to get themselves out of a pretty big hole, and I think, you know, white has probably let them a little bit. Now the next move is queen e2, and if they do this, that's pretty much the end, because now you bring your knight here, and this is where that queen to c7 begins to be actually important, because the queen is now bearing down completely upon this spot, and if, let's say, your opponent does something really dumb, like just moves his pawn up, that is checkmate, because there's literally nothing you can do. And so that's a pretty early checkmate. That's a checkmate in 9 moves, just not something you really want to see. So what a lot of times, actually, sorry, it's not checkmate at that point, because, you know, there's this, but it's not good. And so you'll see a lot of players want to kind of, they want to get rid of some of that aggression by they'll do this, where they'll do this, and just to try to, you know, attack that horse and kind of get him away from there. But now you can do this, and this is really, yeah, so it's this move that really lays the trap, because then you can go here, and in this case, white has 2 choices: lose their queen or lose the entire game. Because now what you've done is they can't move this knight, because if they take with the knight, then you just come down with the queen, and that's checkmate. And they can't move they're forking you. It's a brilliant move, because it forks you between the knight and the queen. So if you move your queen to try and get away, boom, knight gets taken, and no matter what move black makes at this point, no matter what move white makes at this point, it's checkmate, because white can only make 1 move, and because this checks the king too, and this puts the king must move, and now queen comes down here and is checkmate. So it's just this move is widely known, you know, this kind of like pincer move, but the knight is kind of the saving grace, unless they move this pawn up, because if they don't, and they make some other move, that other move probably foils this somehow, because, like, if they move their queen, you know, back down here at first, you know, when this thing comes down, it just gets taken, and then there's still no move, and you just, like, there's no, the queen specifically must be in a place where the knight can attack it, but it cannot be attacked by the knight. And so it's just like a very specific combination of moves that result from that one gambit that can make white a pretty big loser in this case. So yeah, if you are white and you see this and you want to avoid this trap, just literally don't move your pawn, or, you know, make sure you can't get forked between your knight and your queen. So yeah, those were 2 traps that you can fall into. Both of them I like, because they result in checkmates if they go perfectly, and even if the other player sees, like, oh no, you know, I'm gonna lose my knight, or I'm gonna lose my queen here, like, I'm just gonna accept it and work to prevent, you know, something else bad from happening. you lose your queen, which is huge for black, and it just completely negates all of this early pressure that white had by by doing the gambit. This is a great way for black to successfully rebuke that. And even if it doesn't result in checkmate, even if black makes the right move for the legal gambit, black ends up either down in material or taking bad trades and in bad field positions. So yeah, that was a couple of chess traps. Not sure what we're gonna do next week. It's kind of just the mood that I'm in and what I'm feeling. But I might do an aspect of mid game strategy to watch out for, or maybe another trap and another opening. Maybe a few closers. I could do closers because I haven't done those yet. But yeah, look out for the next episode and the next and last episode of Chess Fridays on next week, August 11th. And also, as always, just if you want chess instruction from someone who isn't me and someone who's very qualified to do this, you can head on over to Learnivore, and we have a ton of chess instructors. And also, there's an offering currently up right now that is for a 75-minute chess session. So if you're watching this at all, if you're watching this from the New York area, you can get 20% off before August 11th, before my next Chess Fridays, by using the code August when you buy it. And if you have any questions about that,